The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by Continental Energy Solutions. Check us out at cesnrg.com. I'm Tim Montague, your co-host. Today on the Clean Power Hour, the aftermath of the Texas grid collapse means microgrid bonanza, definitely. Germany was 100% clean energy powered? Could be. It's official. The U.S. broke records in 2020. We installed a record amount of solar in 2020. Yes, indeed. And there's a 400 kilowatt hour EV truck chassis from Bollinger that's on the market. Welcome to the show, John Weaver, the commercial solar guy, and my co-host. Welcome.
Timothy, how are you? I hope everything is nice. It's cold, but blue skies for me. Busy as heck, and I too want to actually see a real on the market truck for sale. So I totally get your talk there about the Bollinger. I'm all about it. I'm well, Tim. How are you? How's your week been?
We're off to the races. And yes, it's surprisingly busy, even though the Illinois market has quote unquote collapsed. A note on that is that if you're a CNI owner and you want to get into solar, as I said on Benoit Thanjan's podcast, which is now live, so check that out, the Solar Maverick podcast. It's like a tidal wave, John, where you can't see the tidal wave until it gets near to shore. And so even though the subsidies have been used up right now in Illinois, if you don't get in the game now for the next wave of subsidies, you'll
Mm-hmm.
miss the wave because once it's visible, it's too late. You
Yep.
have to get in the game now. So if you're a CNI solar owner and you want to get into solar, talk to me or talk to your favorite solar installer because you really have to get in the wait list now in order to benefit from those subsidies because they come and go quicker than almost the blink of an eye.
So in Illinois, so you have the SREC program that'll be coming back. Uh, your interconnection queues out in the country, how are those substations looking? And do you have a like a PJM map of the region so that you can get some pre-hosting capacity map analysis going on, or how's it work to get some big projects? I ask for a very specific reason. I have a
Yeah.
friend of mine who owns some land. He's a farmer. He's been thinking about doing a community solar project, and I want to inquire.
You don't know until you do the interconnection study.
Ah,
They
so no
don't make
hosting
that
cap.
information easily available. And so you have to spend money, you have to
Mm-hmm.
do a level, at least a level 2, usually a level 4.
Yep.
And so you're looking at a few tens of thousands of dollars to do the study, and then they'll come back and say, okay, you need X, Y, and Z upgrades or not. And, it is still very early days. There's only 111 community solar projects. There's a growing number of utility scale projects, but that are under construction now, a handful of those, these 100
Mm-hmm.
to 400 megawatt projects.
Ooh,
So,
that's big.
you'd got to think that it's easier to interconnect in Illinois than in Massachusetts. But,
Yes,
um,
but we have
but
maps, and our cost is much cheaper than tens of thousands to get a basic data back. So that's real interesting. So a 2 megawatt AC facility. We're going to go straight for 10 acres. Um,
mhm.
what's our interconnection cost going to be there for that project? Just for
Open
application.
your pocketbook, buddy.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. 10 G's to get the data back, but your probability of interconnection is 99%.
oh,
Like,
oh,
no, no.
I don't think
50-50.
so. I don't think
Yeah.
so. Um, I don't truly know, John, because I don't develop community solar myself. I talk
Okay.
to all the developers and I get whisperings here and there. And the developers were disappointed with the fees that came back early in the process. Some of them $1 million.
Yep.
Uh, and so it is a dynamic situation as it is in many markets. I
Hmm.
don't know if there's an average that I could say off the top of my head, but it would easily be $100,000 to get through the interconnection process.
Hmm.
That being said, we've had several, 2 megawatt behind the meter projects where there were minimal
Yep.
upgrades.
Cool.
So
Well, I may come to you real soon as a developer and ask for your support. So we'll see.
yeah,
All right.
yeah, it's I mean, the other thing is that with community solar in Illinois, there's a huge wait list of projects, but apparently the IPA is going to do a both and approach where they're going to use the wait list, but they're also going to let new projects come in. Plus, a lot of these interconnections are now expiring,
Mhm.
and the non-ministerial permits are expiring because it's been so long. And of course, some of them have been kept alive, but you can only keep those things alive for so long. And the clock keeps ticking. So time is running out on those. And so it'll be a clean slate, I think, in many ways for this next round, but that's not anticipated. I mean, everybody wants new legislation. We want it. We need it. We need the uh, Path to 100 legislation here in Illinois. There's also something called the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which is analogous, and there's some overlap. We want the Clean Energy Jobs Act too. The path is more explicit about bolstering the incentives, so we're more pro path. But
Hmm.
my mantra is just don't wait. You gotta, if you're behind the meter, especially, just don't wait. But
Good.
community solar is deeper water, higher risk
Yep.
for sure.
Sounds like every other developing, learning, growing solar market. You're competing a business. You're not just walking in writing checks. So
Yeah,
cool
but
information.
if you're gonna do this in Massachusetts, what would you expect to spend on the early stages of development?
For very, very early stages of development for interconnection purposes, we'll spend, you do your one line diagram. Well, first off, I would look at our hosting capacity map. And on that map, I can see explicitly what's on the local circuit, what's on the local substation. So at that point, I sort of kind of know what fight is in front of me. And my early stage is free. So there's that. I want to know, I don't mind paying $1 million for an upgrade on a 7 megawatt project if I know it's going to connect. I just want to know what my number is and what my connection probability is. So for free, I can determine what I'm going to have to do in order to be approved to interconnect. Whether A, it's just going to go through like cake, or B, whether I'm going to have additional fees. So first fee is $4.50 per kW. And that just goes up, plus your your engineering costs. And that comes back and they say, hey, there's a lot going on. We have to do an impact study, and that's like 20 G's. And and that's for bigger projects, 5 G's, 10 G's. It just depends. But for step zero, insight into what might occur, that's free hosting capacity.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
I guess someday we can dream about that ease of use. Is Massachusetts in PJM?
No, Massachusetts is NEISO.
Yeah.
New England ISO.
Yeah. Well, hey,
All
I
right.
found this awesome report by BNEF. I'm going to put this on screen, and this was news to me. I mean, I've seen many stories by BNEF, Bloomberg, New Energy Finance, and but they do this sustainability. Let's see what it's called: Sustainable Energy in America 2021 Factbook. And what I really like about this, John, is that it's got a clickable table with different technologies: traditional gas, solar, PV and storage, wind, biomass, geothermal, energy storage alone. And then you can click on it, and then that takes you to this lovely table, shows you what's going on with large scale solar. And as we see, 2020 was a record year. You are going to talk about a story from PV Magazine on that same subject.
Yep.
Um, and I mean, I'm hoping that this doesn't mean that we're going to do this again, right? I want to do that and see 2021 be another record year. But um,
And I think it will be.
yeah,
I'm wondering about 2022. being bigger than 2021, but I think 2022 will be bigger than 2020. How's that?
Yeah.
So I think the next 2 years will definitely be record years, including this year maybe being really big.
Yep. So there's a segment there on batteries. There's a segment on hydrogen, which I wanted to put on screen here if I can
It's on the
find
right.
it. There we
There
go.
you go.
6.2. This is really interesting. The hydrogen economy right now, there's about 2 gigawatts of hydrogen fired power plants in the US. And oh no, sorry, half a gigawatt. And by 2025, we're going to 10x that, according to this. So I didn't realize things were kind of as ripe as they were here in the US. This also shows the Netherlands and the UK. I'm not sure why it doesn't show other European countries, but and then it shows some of the developers. Nextera is a name we will all recognize. I don't recognize any of these other ones. Danskammer? That sounds Danish. Danskammer in New York.
LADWP. I mean, that's the Los Angeles
Oh yeah.
power water.
Yep.
Water power.
Yep.
And I think they're using that to offset some natural gas facilities downtown. So, but I'm not sure. There's people talking about using hydrogen out in Utah. There's a big coal facility out in Utah that feeds Los Angeles. And they're talking about putting hydrogen and all kinds of different technology out there because there's a great power line. The power line's in place. So if you got a power line, build something.
Yeah, it says here there's a project in Ohio called the Long Ridge Energy Terminal. And originally intended to use only natural gas, it now is expected to burn a blend of hydrogen and natural gas when it's commissioned in 2021, potentially reaching 100% green hydrogen by the end of the decade. So anyway, check that report out, the sustainability. I can't remember the name of this thing. Sustainable Energy in America Factbook 2021. So
I like BNEF. They've got good data. I speak with several of their professionals on a regular basis via Twitter and other places. And in fact, I probably even reference one of them later on in the show, completely unconnected. So BNEF in general, I am they give good data. So, throw it out there.
Agreed wholeheartedly. Our friends in Germany are now 100% clean powered, according to Bruno Berger.
Well, yeah. So here's what occurred. There's been a lot of wind in Germany, and you can see it. That split pea soup green color is wind power, and the if you notice somewhere at that time where that white bar is way to the right, the demand I think is that black line that's kind of squiggling down there. The demand was less than the generation volume of renewables. And renewables, there's multiple types of renewables. And, there was still fossils running because, the sun goes down, the wind doesn't blow. We haven't really deployed enough batteries yet. But for moments, I don't know, could have been an hour, could have been a tenth of a second. I don't really care. For a moment greater than zero, Germany was 100%, its electricity demand was 100% met by renewables.
Sure.
And that's just cool. I know we're not there yet, obviously. We still got coal burning, so we're not there yet. However, we are closer. And we got to see one of the world's largest, most developed power grids, which is in the midst of a huge power grid, the European power grids. It managed to not blow up and catch on fire. And so that's pretty cool. So that's it. That's all I want to talk about.
I'm surprised to see uranium here still. So I thought Germany was shutting down all of its nuclear plants. Maybe they're buying nuclear power from somewhere else?
No. They still have facilities. It might be that they're going to be dropping like 63 terawatt hours or some massive amount of nuclear in 2022. So they've been shutting it down since 2011. Again, they had slowed down the shutdown, and then in 2011 they sped it up again. And so I think next year, by the end of the year, is when they're supposed to be completely shut down. And that's kind
Yeah.
of sad, but I
It's the
guess.
10th, it's the 10th anniversary of Fukushima. So
Hmm.
there's been a lot of news about Fukushima, which is still a ghost town.
Yep.
I feel bad for the Japanese. Um, it was a, it was a farming area, very bucolic, rural area in Japan, and now it's a ghost town. I mean, of course, nature's coming back and taking over the formerly built environment. It's kind of weird, but I
So
guess
that's
the
it.
the lesson is don't build your nuclear plant right on the coast. You could build it upland a little bit. It would have been a lot safer. I don't, they need the water for the cooling, I guess. Maybe that's why that drove the coastal. And of course, it's an island country, so it's hard to get away from the coast. But what were you going to say?
I was gonna say. All I was gonna say is that's great about Germany. I'm super happy to see those numbers in that market. So yeah,
Yeah.
then I jumped in on you.
Yep. Agreed. Totally awesome numbers. Speaking
And
of
here's some
totally,
and here's some more numbers that are totally awesome. As I interrupt you twice now,
that's all right. U.S. solar industry comes roaring back.
I get excited sometimes and I can't stop talking to him. So that's just kind of what happens. You know this by this point.
We like that about you, John.
So I mean, this article, this is a report coming out from WoodMac. You can find the hard data on SIA's website too, or WoodMac. They sell the full report and they'll break it out really deeply. But we already knew, you and I, Tim, because we talked about it, that we're going to get like 19, 20 gigs. This report puts it at 19.2 gigs that was deployed in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
in 2020. That breaks the record of about 15.1. And notice that, and that number keeps going up. But the 2016 record, at one point, it was 14.7. And it turned out, after a lot of research was collected more, that it's actually 15.1. So 400 megawatts of solar more was built, in our record year of 2016. But now that's no longer the record year, because 2020 is the record year at 19.2 gigs. We grew like a huge amount. And this year, my original data, and it could be old by now, was at 25 gigs for the United States. So maybe it's going to be 24, whatever. What matters is that we added a lot of solar. That map you were just looking at was the number one capacity map. But we should go back to that article and bring that back on screen, because you mentioned something about what's going to happen over the long term. There's a really nice chart going into the future at the bottom of that article, and it looks at solar through 2030. And this is WoodMac. WoodMac, I like to make a really lame joke. I like to call them WoodMac Renewables and Power, because they're WoodMac Power and Renewables. And, that's my joke. See how funny I am. But they're a very conservative with their numbers group. They're always smart. They're never going to overbid numbers. They're never going to be too high. And if you look at 2020, we see that great number. Look at 2021. Look at 22. Look at 23. We got big growth over the next few years. And then keep going out just a little further, Tim. And what happens next out to 2030, dude?
Yeah.
That's over 50 gigs. That's double the potential record that we might have this year. Double it. These are the conservative people. I wonder what 2030 is really going to be like. That's the number one reason I wanted to share this article, is that chart. Is, we should have good next following few years, but then, man, look what's coming. Look what's coming. Just hold on. And, hopefully next few years too. So that's it. I love that chart. That chart was great. It's great to see WoodMac pushing 50 plus by the end of the decade, because that probably means it's going to be 60. So,
Yep, agreed.
yeah.
Thank you, Joe Bebon, associate editor at PV Magazine, for that story. Good stuff. Yep. And yeah, these things are very hard to predict, I think. it's a tipping point thing. And but the good news really in the back of my mind always is the Biden administration really wants more renewables. So that force is going to be driving us forward. There's the pull through from the economics, right? The economics are just really good. A lot of utilities are now retiring their coal and gas assets and building wind, solar, and battery storage en masse. So
Another story is making the rounds right now of the the inflation, the asset overvaluation, something like that of these fossil facilities. And they're looking at it from a pure economic investment standpoint. And a coal plant whose financial models, net present values, were built on 40, 60, 80-year operating lives, only having 15 years or 5. The considerations, the assets that are in pension funds, the assets that are in all across Wall Street, these are fundamentally mismarked, and they're not going to be able to last forever. And when that reckoning occurs, money is going to change. It's going to it's just going to be like, woo, it's going to be fast, or it's already happening. And it's interesting. It's interesting to watch the way it's being looked at. The green, warm, and fuzzy angle has been dropped, and that's the secondary tool. It's the money. So
yep.
Next story.
Yeah. So the the grid failure in February in Texas was a real eye-opening event. The the in the middle of America, there's this Arctic dip, right? The cold comes from Canada. It usually only comes into the upper Midwest. One of the interesting facts about this is that Chicago has colder weather than Oslo, Norway. Oslo, Norway is at the same latitude of Anchorage, Alaska. And yet the temperatures there in the winter are milder than in Chicago because of this Arctic effect. Well, once in a blue moon, that cold air dips all the way down to Texas. And that's what caused the really cold weather and massive grid outages. And of course, it's a wake up call that we need more resiliency, which means more microgrids. So my headline was the Texas grid fail is going to be a bonanza for microgrids. And I found this is just an indicative story. This is not the story. There's going to be a huge build out of microgrids in Texas. I'm having a guest on the Solar Podcast. It'll publish next week, who's going to be hinting at this, where there's an oil major that now owns a battery company. They're going to be installing a very large number of residential batteries and then using that as a virtual power plant to hedge against these grid outages and to provide resiliency to the residents of Texas at no cost to Texas residents. Because what has happened is that not only have residents been hit with huge power bills, the 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 companies that supply power have been hit with huge power bills, and many of them are now going bankrupt, John.
Yep.
And so these executives are just going, well, how do we solve this problem of super expensive power when there's a grid failure? And the answer is batteries. And so I was excited to find this publication, Microgrid Knowledge. I've never seen this before either. And this story is just documenting, some of the microgrids that are happening, and people are tracking them at, hospitals and campuses and other facilities, quote unquote, around Texas. But we're at the very tippy toe beginning of the microgrid revolution, John. And I don't have a battery in my garage. I have a battery in my RV, and I have a battery in my EV. And between those two, I have some resiliency, which is awesome. But literally in 10 years, every American should have a battery in their garage for resiliency, and solar on their roof or solar on their RV, right? Because you got to recharge the battery after a couple days, unfortunately.
It's funny. A few months ago, maybe even last summer, uh, I remember it was in the fall because I had already bought the Tesla, and I was sitting outside working, and I had Bluetooth headphones on, and they had batteries, and I had my laptop, had my phone, had my little carry along battery that I use. And I remember saying, "Oh, I've got like 6, 7 batteries in my life because each little headphone has a battery. Then the little thing that holds the headphones has a battery, and then the phone has a battery, laptop has a battery, I have my extra battery, I have my car battery." And I was like, "Wow, that's pretty neat. There's batteries everywhere." And yeah, so it's happening in Texas. They're growing. We're connecting to them, and where I talked about legislation recently in front of the Rhode Island legislature about removing power control of the distribution grid from the utility and moving it into a private organization to manage it, and that would be state controlled because of Texas. And Sonova and residential energy storage, every single project, residential energy storage. I work with a very successful resi guy. He's pushing 60-ish projects a month, 70 projects a month with his various lines, and he says 60% attach rate, 70% attach rate, 50% at least. There's going to be a million batteries deployed in the United States over the next 4 years, 3 years. We had 400,000 residential systems installed last year. It's huge. Oh my gosh. We're going to have we may not have 500,000 this year, but we're going to have a lot of resi systems. And if half of them have batteries, there's not even enough batteries right now to feed these people. There's such a demand for residential batteries, Tim. It's like Tesla's backed up months. Everybody is just selling out of batteries right now. There's just huge demand. So everything you said about that microgrid, it's going to start in people's garages. No questions asked.
Well, and Tesla announced that they're only going to sell the Powerwall to solar customers now.
Yeah.
If you don't pair the purchase with a solar array, you can't get a Powerwall.
Yeah, because people are just calling up saying, "I want a battery." Tesla's like, "Hey, slow down. Wait, no. You want a battery? Buy some solar." Nice. They ought to sell a kit that says, "Okay, no. You can't buy a battery. We will though send you a bi-directional car." How about that? You know?
Yeah,
You
why
know?
is Elon so down on vehicle to grid? I think he's sandbagging because as we've talked about on the show, the capacity of the EV battery is very good for resiliency purposes. And yeah, you can live out of your car if you need to, and that's a thing. And people did that during the grid outage in Texas. But if you could also plug your car into the grid and power your house with it, that would also be a good thing.
I'm I'm very much so there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, speaking of EVs,
Yeah.
it's like not a week goes by now when I hear about a new company, and I'd heard about Bollinger. So you found a story about Bollinger's electric truck chassis. I'm going to put this on screen,
Mhm.
but they're not in the news a lot. So this was a revisiting of Bollinger for me. Um,
I mean, they're a normal truck company, aren't they? Don't they make just trucks in general? Aren't they do they exist outside of the EV world? I
I
thought
don't
I knew
know.
this company's name before. I mean, I love everything I'm seeing here. Just all the designs, all the numbers, all the drawings, how it's set up. It was just a cool article. If you scroll down, you see the different chassis sizes because trucks are rated in from 1 through 8. They have different classes, and
Yeah.
you can see how they lay out the attachments. If you keep going, they show the chassis structure and how they put the batteries in it. And Bollinger, they've been around for in general. Bollinger trucks. How long they been making trucks? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff on there. Let's see. Let's see. Do I see normal vehicles? Uh, Bollinger. I guess they're a pure EV play. So we don't have any normal trucks. All electric, all wheel drive, all aluminum. I don't know. They make some pretty neat looking vehicles. So Yeah, I guess they're a pure EV shop. I like the look of the product. Um, you're right, though. It's another company on the market. Are they selling something yet? What can we buy? What's for real? I want to see something real today.
Yep, there's a lot of hype about all these new EVs and very few that you can actually buy. You can buy the VW, um, what do they call it? The something four. And so that's a Model Y competitor. I've been watching reviews. It seems like a pretty solid car. It's not quite there on the stats. The Model Y kind of beats it on everything: fast charging, the range, the 0 to 60. But the fit and finish is probably better. The Germans know fit and finish for sure. So if you care about fit and finish, check out the VW ID4. That's what it's called. Um, yeah, Lordstown, of course, has been in the news, right? Because they were
Mhm.
working on a deal with the U.S. Postal Service, and then that big military contractor won the contract.
That's getting looked at, though, and interestingly,
I'm
and if
sure it
that's
is.
yeah, and if
I
that's
don't think we've heard the last of that story, but
I absolutely agree. And if it was a prior political regime that was involved in it, corruption up, down, left, and right. I mean, no question. That's my gut feeling, but we'll see. We'll see how the world evolves.
so speaking of electric trucks, I'm just going to put Canoe on screen because they were in the news here recently with their announcement that they're going to make a pickup truck also.
Mhm.
Canoe kind of made a splash with their quote unquote lifestyle vehicle, which is what you see there. It's a minivan, or a small delivery van. And you can imagine now just a pickup version of that. And I don't see that here, but
What a
maybe I can.
weird looking, cool vehicle,
Yeah, it is weird looking. Um, but
but I like it.
some of the features on the pickup truck, it's got this bed that expands. It's a 6 foot bed that expands to 8 feet, so you can put a sheet of plywood in it. It's got a side gate, so you could put the side gate down as a workspace. It's got a front area where you have charging if you want to have like uh, a bar or a party at the front of your truck. Yeah, it's got some really nifty features. Doesn't come with a screen. They want you to use your phone as a screen, which I kind of resonate with. Um, so
Hmm.
it's kind of very pared down inside. They're very focused on a vehicle for the working person, people that use their vehicles for work. It'll be
Okay.
both, right? People are going to camp in these things, but
I mean, that looks like a vehicle that really quickly you could have the seats turn around backwards in the front and then have everybody in this really big, wide open, small room, of course. And,
yeah,
because that funky shape. It looks like they're designing for the robot driving vehicle of the future. And that's kind of interesting looking there. I mean, that could
yeah.
be a city bus with 8 seats on it, really easy and no driver. It just seems very logical.
I wanted to find a photo of the pickup truck, but doesn't appear to be on their website yet. Well, we
I
better move
saw it.
on.
All right.
Canoe, Canoo. Check it out. I see a theme here though, John. We're talking about electrification and batteries a lot, right? As much as solar and wind are important, storage is just as important, right? We need more, better, longer term storage. Right now it's lithium ion and potentially down the road green hydrogen for longer term storage. The Swedes have built Europe's largest battery plant in Poland. And so there, and this is just one of hundreds of gigafactories I think that are in design and now coming to fruition. This is called Northvolt. This Swedish company, their Gdansk factory, to churn out initially a mere 5 gigawatt hours of battery modules. That's a good number. I don't know what the gigafactory in Nevada cranks out, but
Did you know that
Swedish.
Northvolt just signed a deal? I'm looking it up over here on my screen. So Swedish battery manufacturer Northvolt receives a $14 billion order from VW.
Yes.
And I think VW, and I'm not sure if it's the same order, but maybe it was, but there's a plan to build X number of 50 gigawatt hour factories, pardon me, around Europe. And I think it was VW. I thought it was Northvolt, but all the names are blending because there's so many.
Yeah.
And you're right about the number of gigafactories around the world. There's somebody who I follow, super smart, and the name is going to pop back, but he's putting the gigafactories around the world at somewhere just short of 200, and he's got a list, and I'm going to probably end up sharing them with you, so that you can follow him at some point, because his name is Simon Moores, I think, and I want to tell you his company name real quick. There he is, just found him. And so Benchmark Minerals, and he puts the number of gigafactories in the world approaching 120 through like 2027, something like that. Here it is. Here's the VW. So VW plans as much as 240 gigawatt hours of battery manufacturing capacity via 6 gigafactories across Europe. So that's via Benchmark Materials. And wow, this Northvolt deal is one of them. But did you see the tweet that I added underneath that Northvolt post there?
No.
So not only did you pick your Norwegian friends, because you're not Swedish, you're from Norway. So
Well, my kids are half Norwegian. I just got my 23andMe results, John. I am British, Irish, German, and Swiss. No Norwegian was in there, unfortunately. Although there's Viking blood, of course, in all Northern Europeans. But
yeah, so what you're saying is that all the people were fighting wars in the past, and at some point they met up and you popped out. So that's how the European histories work, because it's everybody. Europeans are everybody. There's very few people that can say I am from here for 3,000 years, because
yeah,
since the Romans, just roving bands of wild. So
yeah, we're all from somewhere else. I totally agree with that. And
the
yeah,
Great Rift Valley.
I was a little underwhelmed by my 23andMe results. So anyway, I've got that tweet on screen now.
Yeah.
James Frith, cell and EV manufacturing in the Nordics results in some of the lowest manufacturing emissions because of high penetration of low carbon power. Absolutely.
Check out Sweden, dude.
Yep.
Boom. Now this is just the manufacturing. This isn't mining. So you gotta differentiate the chunks. But look at that. I would build all the factories in Sweden, but look at the one at the top of the list.
And France is right there too, because they use nuclear.
Yeah.
And then Poland is at the top
because
they're using coal power, and China's using coal power. Korea's right there. Germany and the US, surprisingly, the US and Germany are equal. That surprises me. I thought the Germans would be ahead of us on the CO2 footprint, but
maybe it's where the battery factories are. There could be other data here. I don't know exactly. Like, for instance, if you in the US, if you put a battery factory in upstate New York, it can be 90% clean energy. If you put that same facility in Nebraska,
right,
it's 98% coal, dude. It's running Nebraska strong. So I just thought that was neat when you had the Swedes there, and at the same time I saw that tweet, and that's some clean electricity up there for putting some batteries together.
Yep. Well, we have another Scandinavian story. This is an oldie but goodie, I like to say, because it's a story about Equinor, which is the national oil company in Norway. It's an oil major. Norway is blessed with these massive oil reserves in the North Sea, so off the coast of northern Norway. And those reserves, I think, are on par with the Saudi oil fields. I mean, they're really big oil fields. And as a result, Norway is super rich. and they have this thing called the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and Norwegians live a really good life. They have a floor. They don't have poverty. They have free education. They have free health care. And yes, they have higher taxes than we do in the US, but they're not as high as you might think. And so anyway, Norwegians as a result are like this, right? They're very middle class. In America, we're here, we have lots of poverty, and we have lots of billionaires and millionaires also. And but anyway, the Norwegians are getting into offshore wind, which makes perfect sense, because if you can build an oil platform, which they build in the city of Stavanger on the west coast, where there's lots of other oil majors, it's not just Equinor. Shell is there, and Shell is the one I noticed a lot, which is a Dutch company. So you think about a platform, an oil platform in deep sea water, right? It's a floating platform. It's anchored to the ocean floor. And now you just build a wind turbine on top of that instead of just a pipeline going into the Earth's crust. And bada bing, bada boom, you have a platform for a floating wind tower. And these, as you and I have talked about now, these wind towers or these wind turbines are getting to be 15 megawatts for an individual wind turbine, right? They're really big. The blades are football field length each. And this is a photo from High Wind, which is off the Irish coast, I believe. It's either Ireland or Scotland.
I think it's Scotland.
Yeah. So we got to watch these Norwegians. They're crafty and they love the ocean. And they love their offshore wind. I think all oil majors will either shift into clean energy or go extinct. It's inevitable if they're going to get serious about being in existence in 50 years. There's a couple decades now, which some of them are going to double down and continue to ride the fossil energy bonanza. But
Exxon will. Exxon wants to be the last one standing. There's a philosophy that as long as we can stand longer than the others, we'll keep making the money.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I wish them good luck. I'm with Jeremy Rifkin, who's predicting a major carbon bubble. So we're famous for John Weaver's cool solar pictures. Oh, and you got a goodie here.
I like that one.
I wonder what is that? Do we know what that facility is?
Oh, I do. That was actually our intern, and I can ask her. It was somewhere north of us. She was driving back from Boston. She pulled over. It's just neat. The panels aren't bent. If you zoom in on the image, and I see it on the one, she showed it to me on her phone yesterday when we were in the office. And
they're regular crystalline panels.
Yeah, nothing bent. It's just you're just far enough, and the curve is just right that you can that it looks nice and smooth. And it was just like, oh, look at that beautiful picture.
It looks like one of those buildings that they store salt in or gravel or something like that. But
somebody suggests it was an ice rink. Because
it might be a sports facility.
Yeah. So I just, it just looked beautiful. And I agree with the intern, Alexis. Alexis, thank you for picking up pictures on the roads. We like you. You're officially approved, part of the team. No questions asked.
Good job, Alexis.
Yes. By the way, Alexis is she's going to Lowell in the fall, UMass Lowell, and she's going to be in a master's program to get a electrical engineering degree and then a renewable something advanced.
Cool.
So she got her under her first half, her associates, and she's just moving along. So it's cool. It's cool to be working with a student and hearing all the crap they have to deal with that I don't. It's wonderful.
So Joe Bebon covered another story which we've wanted to cover for a couple weeks now, but looks like Massachusetts might be following in the footsteps of California, John.
Maybe.
God forbid.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Things get submitted. Lots of things get submitted. There's a lot of discussion about submissions. In fact, I'm covering something from the North Carolina Tech Center right now, for my own website. just reviewing all the laws that changed in the Northeast in the over the last year,
Yeah.
and there were 50 laws submitted in the state of Massachusetts regarding energy, power grid, la da 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 da. None of them passed the legislature. So, just because something's submitted,
Yeah. But what are we talking about? You gotta let our listeners know who aren't on screen, which is the thing. I know you think that YouTube is only for video, but YouTube is also for audio. And I will often listen to YouTube videos in my pocket. I turn the screen off and I listen to the audio only.
Okay.
And you have to have a premium subscription. It costs me $5 a month, and it's well worth it because then I get to listen to you and me.
Okay.
But Massachusetts might be mandating rooftop solar on all new homes and commercial buildings, which is something that California started in 2020.
Yep.
They started mandating on residential, all new residential construction must have solar. And it's commercial will follow. They haven't, I don't know if they've said when, but
roughly, and they're talking about it. But yes, the commercial and government buildings will be first. Commercial will be after government buildings. So in Mass, they're pushing the same. I wrote one of my senators that I follow on Twitter and asked if he needed some pricing opinions. I said I'd like to submit some professional pricing considerations, because I know what some people will submit from the other side of the knowledge chunk. And I love this concept of new construction. The only negative of it is that our building stock moves slowly. So yes, building new buildings that take no new energy, that are net zero from day one, that's awesome. And that will help. No questions asked. No questions asked, especially as time goes, the value of that will be bigger and bigger. Imagine building new structures and them actually being a support to the local grid instead of a draw on the local grid. Then it's like, oh man, we're changing the power grid. New structures are the microgrid and support the grid. That's coming, dude. But the slowness of the building stock shift means that this isn't a short-term climate change solution. This is a cool long-term fix. Short-term, we got to roll volume, and the utility scale people are out west, and the wind people doing stuff, and those are the people rolling the volume that wins the game. That's the most important. But nonetheless, it's huge psychologically to have something like this, and hopefully that leads to an extra 1,000 or 2,000 solar installs a year. I mean, Massachusetts has buildings from like the 1600s, though, so there's the game rolls out in different ways. So it'll be a while for this to have a huge effect, but it's pretty sweet to see.
Well, and I think if it's going to happen anywhere, it's going to happen in New York State or Massachusetts. Those are the bellwethers on the East Coast. This is the Solar Neighborhoods Act that would mandate solar panels be installed on roofs of all newly built homes, apartments, and office buildings. I say throw in a battery too. I mean, you already have legislation that mandates storage on solar projects above 500 kW, right?
Yeah, 500 kW AC, everything that is in the SMART program has to do, and there's ratios with how they pay us. But yeah, I mean, and we have a program called Connected Solutions, which allows residential AC coupled energy storage to participate in power grid demand charge. Well, not demand charge, because resi people don't have demand charge, but at peak points. So we've mapped out the peak points. We have a clean peak standard. That's what it's called. And the top 5% of the dirtiest, most expensive electricity has to be powered by clean. And how you do that is batteries, because you don't have wind and solar when you want it. And they've mapped out the periods when this occurs. And so small batteries are part of the big grid in Massachusetts. And that's totally cool.
The more I think about this, John, we have building codes that require you to install electrical infrastructure in the building. If you're going to build a new building, right, you have to have electricity running into the building. It has to be grid connected. Well, now we know we need a more modern grid that includes solar and storage, so you have resiliency when the grid goes down. Why don't we just mandate microgrids in all new buildings, right? And let's get ahead of the curve instead of being so reactive. And only when we get a black eye in Texas or in California do we do anything about it. Let's just do it.
Timothy now.
I know. Crazy talk.
Slow down, bro. Slow down.
Oh.
I have dreams of power grids starting with the local circuit, and everybody on the circuit is given a chance to own the solar power facility and or the battery that's on that circuit. And every circuit is designed, is researched, and we know the demand, we know who it's coming from, and we run the numbers and say, okay, this circuit is going to always have at least 20% of its electricity locally stored. There will be one shipping container per circuit, 2 shipping containers, something so that we have an equivalent of a substation and circuit level emergency backup distributed at the very, very tippy ends of the grid edge. And, putting it in a building that takes it one tippy end further past it's just beyond the edge of the grid. It's making a new spot on the grid. And you're right, dude. Your car should have it. A business that has 10 vans, that place would be backed up for 10 days if that 400 kW Bollinger truck, Tim, if you took that home from work Saturday night and the power goes out, your house would run until it'd run for 2 weeks, run for a week. If you had solar, you'd never worry. So it's we're gonna have so many devices. What's gonna be the hot thing, Tim, is protecting these devices. How are we gonna protect tens of millions of internet connections that have batteries and wind and solar behind them? And when our computers get whacked so hard, it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of batteries, a lot of solar, a lot of buildings, a lot of microgrids all over.
So we need cheaper batteries. That is coming. I saw a Car and Driver article that say we're going to break the $100 per kilowatt hour mark in 2022 or 2023. So that's imminent. And then what other authorities are saying is the breakthrough moment is $80 a kilowatt hour.
I thought it was 100.
No, so 80 is when there's a massive adoption of EVs, but 100 is a watermark that is coming.
So 100 is just break-even point, whereas 80 is like, oh, it's dumb to buy a gas car.
But 100 is imminent. I think we're at 130 today. We're in the 130 to 150 range today.
It varies though, actually. I've seen that number for like big buses in China. It's under 100. It's like 85. For small cars in Europe, it's like 150, 170. So it just varies. I've seen a really cool chart from BNEF, of course, a gentleman named Colin, and it was just a neat chart. So yeah, it's cool, man. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool to watch. Come on, you got to show this chart. You got to show this next chart. Please show my next chart.
One more story. So I need help though. What are you talking about?
It's just an image. That's it. It's not even a story. It's just a chart. I just want to show off high efficiency modules. It's like, hi everybody, if you want to see solar panels that are really high efficiency, here they are. Here's the list. That's it. Zoom in on it. Let everybody bask in its glory. And, we could say the names out loud just to, make Google happy because, Google's listening. Ryzen, JA Solar, Chint, Ryzen again, CSI, REC, GSL. Man, the REC panel, the alpha panel, that one's awesome. The Maxions, you see the 2 sun powers up there?
Yep.
Jollywood, that's a TopCon. That's an N-type TopCon. Mono perk. Listen to all those words that I know that are weird. It's just neat to see these big efficiency panels. I just like seeing this chart. That's it. This is more just hardware.
Yeah, it's It's a good group of panel manufacturers. I mean, truly, these are the world's leading solar panel manufacturers in a nutshell. So,
Yep.
um, brought to us by Taiyang News.
I
I'm
like
sure
this
I'm
site. I like this site. They're a touch slow with recycling news, certain news, but then with other news, they're original content producers, and they do amazing hardware research for panels, for modules, and they even get into the machines that make panels. So Tim, you would be totally bored with some of the stuff I would share from them, but it's awesome because they just talk about 20 different manufacturers of the silver paste. Like, I've written their reports on, or read their reports on silver paste, and it's like, holy crap, where do you get all this knowledge about the paste that goes into it? And there's so many different ways of doing just the paste. Every component within these panels is a science, and the panels itself is one of 4, 5, 6 components on a project. And so the silver paste is a science. The everything. It's just neat. It's neat. So I like this source, and I think it's Sunny Bloke on Twitter is one of the folks who work for them, and that's just a nice name. It's Sunny.
Well, we've come to the end of another Clean Power Hour. I want to thank you, John. How can our listeners find you, the commercial solar guy?
They can run outside and scream really loud, and I'll come immediately. I'll fly. Just type into Google commercial solar guy or John Fitzgerald Weaver, because that's my real life name. And you can find us on our website. You can find us on Twitter. You can LinkedIn, whichever your favorite way of communicating is, and we can help. We build projects. We have a general contractor license as well. We can help landowners, rooftop owners, homeowners, whomever. We do lots of stuff, and we're located in Mass, so we can build in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And that's
And if
us.
you're ever looking for a lot of detail on the stories that we cover each week, you're doing a blog post like this one: flying panels, floating batteries, big bada boom. Uh, and so you're covering the podcast, and you're covering all kinds of other stuff as well. 24-hour solar power plant, a financial analysis.
Yeah, you might
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
that was the Japanese one. Yeah.
Yep.
Love that.
Yep.
Well, and you can find me at cesnrg.com/podcast. I'm Tim Montague, your co-host. Please give us a thumbs up, share this content with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and check out the Solar Podcast interviews. We also bring you the Clean Power Hour on that same page, cesnrg.com/podcast. And I want to thank my co-host, John Weaver, for being here and bringing us so many good stories. You have a great week, John.
You as well, Tim.
Let's grow solar.